In the bustling heart of Tokyo, amidst the crowded streets and towering buildings, there was a quiet corner called Shibuya. It was a place where people rushed to catch their trains and go about their busy lives. But for Professor Hidezaburo Ueno, it had become a place of solitude. Professor Ueno was a brilliant man, well respected for his work at Tokyo Imperial University. He was a kind and gentle soul, but his life had been marked by sadness. His wife, the woman he loved deeply, had passed away many years ago. Their home, once filled with laughter and warmth, was now cold and silent. Each evening, the professor would sit by the window, looking out over the busy streets of Shibuya. His thoughts often wandered back to the days when his life had been full of love and companionship. The memories of his wife's gentle voice and the warmth of her touch haunted him, and the empty house seemed to echo her absence. One rainy evening, as the professor walked home through the dark streets, he heard a soft whimper coming from an alley. Curious, he turned down the narrow path and found a small, shivering puppy. The little dog was curled up under a wooden crate, its fur soaked by the pouring rain. His small, dark eyes looked up at the professor with a mixture of fear and trust. Without thinking, the professor knelt down and gently lifted the puppy into his arms. The tiny creature trembled but seemed comforted by the warmth of the professor's embrace. The professor's heart softened as he looked down at the puppy. "You poor thing," he muttered, brushing the rain from the dog's fur. "You're all alone, aren't you?" The puppy whimpered in reply, and the professor's heart melted. In that moment, he knew that this little creature was meant to be with him. "From now on, your name will be Hachiko," he said, smiling as he cradled the dog in his arms. "You will never be alone again." Days turned into weeks, and weeks into months. Hachiko grew quickly, his golden fur shining brightly in the sun. He was strong, playful, and loyal, and the bond between him and the professor deepened each day. Every morning, the professor would put on his hat and coat, preparing to leave for work. Hachiko would jump around excitedly, his tail wagging like mad. He knew that this meant another trip to Shibuya Station, where they would part ways for a while. "Shall we go, Hachi?" the professor would ask with a smile, and Hachiko would bark happily in response. As they walked through the park near their home, Hachiko would race ahead, darting through the trees, chasing falling leaves in the autumn, or sniffing at the flowers in spring. The professor would laugh, watching the puppy's boundless energy. But their journey was always the same. When they reached Shibuya Station, the professor would kneel down to Hachiko's level and stroke his head. "Wait for me, Hachi," he would say. "I'll be back soon." Hachiko would watch the professor board the train and disappear into the crowd. Then, with a sense of calmness, he would sit on the platform and wait. He had learned the routine well. No matter how long it took, the professor would always come back. One afternoon, as they sat together on a park bench, the professor looked at Hachiko with soft eyes. The autumn leaves fell gently around them, and a cool breeze rustled the trees. It was one of those quiet moments, full of love and unspoken understanding. "Hachi," the professor said softly, "you are more than just a dog to me. You are my friend, my family." Hachiko looked up at him, his ears perked, his tail gently swaying. The professor smiled and continued, "No matter what happens, you will always have a place in my heart." Hachiko licked the professor's hand, his eyes filled with affection and trust. He didn't understand the words, but he could feel the love behind them. And he responded with a soft whimper of contentment. "You will never be alone again," the professor said, and Hachiko wagged his tail, as if agreeing. In that moment, the professor knew that this small, loyal dog would always be by his side, no matter the challenges they might face. Then, one day, everything changed. It was a bright, clear morning, just like any other. The professor and Hachiko walked together to the train station, as they had done so many times before. As usual, the professor bent down and patted Hachiko's head. "Wait for me, Hachi," he said. "I'll be back soon." But that day, the professor didn't return. Later, that afternoon, as the professor was walking across a busy street, a terrible accident occurred. A speeding car, unable to stop in time, struck the professor. He fell hard to the ground. And though the people around him rushed to help, it was too late. The professor's life ended that day, but Hachiko didn't know. That evening, as the sun began to set, Hachiko stood at Shibuya Station, eagerly waiting for the professor's return. The trains arrived one after another, but the professor never stepped off any of them. Hachiko waited, patiently, watching every face in the crowd. The night grew darker, but still, Hachiko did not leave his spot. For the first time in his life, Hachiko was alone. Days turned into weeks, weeks turned into months, and still, Hachiko waited. He went to the station every day, just as he had done when the professor was alive. People who passed by would notice the loyal dog sitting in the same spot, his eyes scanning the crowds for the professor's familiar face. Some of the townspeople were curious, others were moved by the sight. "That dog has been waiting here every day for months," one man said, shaking his head in disbelief. "He's waiting for someone," another woman whispered, her voice filled with sympathy. But Hachiko never moved. The seasons changed. Spring brought fresh flowers, summer brought heat, autumn brought golden leaves, and winter brought snow. In spring, the cherry blossoms bloomed around the station, and Hachiko would sit under them, looking up at the pink flowers that had once bloomed with the professor by his side. In summer, the sun would beat down, and Hachiko would lie on the cool stone, still waiting. In autumn, the falling leaves would dance in the wind, and Hachiko would watch them, his eyes filled with longing. And in winter, snow would blanket the station, covering Hachiko's fur. But he never moved. People took pity on him, offering food and water. Some even tried to take him to their homes. But Hachiko always returned to the station. He would not leave. The final snowfall. After 10 long years of waiting, one cold winter evening, the snow began to fall. softly at first, then heavier, blanketing everything in its pure whiteness. Hachiko sat at the station, his once golden fur now white with age. His tail no longer wagged as it had in his youth, and his eyes were tired. But still, he waited, just as he always had. The snowflakes fell on him, covering his body as he sat motionless, staring at the station entrance. His mind wandered back to the times when he and the professor would sit together in the park, laughing and playing. And then, something changed. As Hachiko closed his eyes, he felt a familiar warmth, the warmth of the professor. In his dream, he saw the professor smiling at him. "Hachi, you waited so long," the professor said softly. "You're such a good boy." Hachiko's heart swelled with happiness. The professor's voice was as comforting as it had always been. Hachiko wagged his tail, though weakly, and took a step forward. "Let's go home, Hachi." The professor's voice was kind and loving. And in that moment, Hachiko felt at peace. As the snow fell around him, Hachiko passed away quietly, his body resting peacefully in the place where he had waited so long. When the townspeople found Hachiko the next morning, they were deeply moved. People gathered at the station, quietly mourning the loss of the loyal dog. "He waited for so long," one man whispered. "What a beautiful,